Trains carry people from one place to another. But what if one night, the train you boarded didn't have a destination? In tonight's story, a man finds himself on a ride with no end and no way off. This is the tale of the midnight train.
It's so late. Where is this train?
David had been traveling for hours, desperately trying to get home after a long day. His car broke down miles back, and he was lucky enough to find this desolate train station by sheer chance. The midnight train was his last hope. But something about the place felt off. The air was too still, the silence too loud. It was as if time itself had stopped.
Come on. I need to get home.
He was about to give up when he heard it, a low, distant whistle cutting through the fog. David turned toward the tracks, and through the mist, an old train emerged. It looked ancient, worn, like something out of a forgotten era. The windows were dark, except for a faint light flickering at the very back of the train.
Well, here goes nothing.
As the train creaked to a stop, the doors opened with a metallic groan. David hesitated. There was no conductor, no passengers, not even a sign of life. But it was late, and there were no other options. He took a deep breath and stepped on board, the cold air following him as the doors closed behind. The train's interior was no better. Old, decaying seats lined the car, covered in dust. The air was freezing, and each breath David took felt like it carried a weight. He walked down the narrow aisle, the sound of his footsteps muffled by the thick, unsettling silence. It was as if the entire train was holding its breath. As David moved through the cars, a faint light caught his eye, a single glow at the very back of the train. Each car was empty, but as he passed through, strange noises echoed around him. The creak of metal, distant whispers that seemed to fade as he approached. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching him. When he finally reached the last car, David found her, a lone passenger, sitting motionless by the window. She was dressed in clothes from another time, her skin pale as though she hadn't seen daylight in years. She didn't acknowledge him, didn't even blink. She just sat there, staring out the window at the passing fog. David approached her cautiously, asking if she was okay. But the woman didn't respond. Her lips were slightly parted, as if she was about to speak, but no words came. Uneasy, David sat across from her, casting glances out the window. But the landscape outside wasn't what he expected. The world seemed distorted, twisted trees, shadows moving just out of sight, and a thick black fog swallowing everything around the train. The train picked up speed, and with it, the lights began to flicker. David glanced at the woman again. Her lips were moving now, barely a whisper. He leaned closer, straining to hear her, but her words were impossible to understand, like the echoes of a forgotten language. Suddenly, the train lurched violently, throwing David forward. The woman's whisper grew louder, more frantic, but still just out of reach. He looked out the window again and saw them, shadowy figures, clawing at the glass, their faces pressed against the windows. They weren't passengers. They were something else entirely. David rushed toward the door, trying to get out, but it wouldn't budge. The shadows outside banged against the windows, the glass cracking under the pressure. He looked back at the woman, and for the first time she turned to him. Her eyes were hollow, empty, as she whispered clearly now,
"You never should have boarded this train."
The lights went out, plunging the train into complete darkness. David felt the cold air rush in as the shadows broke through the windows. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came, and then there was nothing. Some trains take you where you want to go, others where you were never meant to be. Until next time, watch where your journey takes you. You never know when you might be on the midnight train.